No one could handle the billionaire's wife until a boy did the impossible and he froze. The scream ripped through the cabin at 35,000 feet, sharp enough to cut through engine noise and luxury-class whispers alike. Passengers froze mid-breath as chaos erupted in row 3, where the billionaire's wife, known across continents for her icy dominance and explosive temper, had just been defied. No one ever challenged her. Not assistants. Not executives. Not even her powerful husband. Yet, in that split second, as the plane jolted and hearts pounded, a small boy did something so shocking that time itself seemed to stop. What followed would leave everyone on board questioning power, fear, and the true meaning of control. The air felt heavy, charged with dread. People stared, mouths open, phones halfway raised but forgotten, unsure whether they were witnessing a tantrum, a tragedy, or the beginning of something far worse. The boy stood there small, trembling, defiant, while the woman who had crushed grown men with a glance suddenly couldn't move. Her face drained of color. Her body stiffened. And the billionaire, seated just a few rows away, felt his blood run cold as he realized this was no ordinary confrontation. This was a reckoning. Asterisk. Everyone on that private commercial hybrid flight knew exactly who sat in first class. Evelyn Cross, the billionaire's wife. A woman whose reputation preceded her like a storm warning. She didn't just enter rooms, she conquered them. Airline staff whispered her name with dread. Business partners folded under her pressure. Even seasoned flight attendants had requested reassignment when her name appeared on the manifest. She was already furious before takeoff. Her assistant had made a mistake, something trivial, something human, but Evelyn treated it like betrayal. Sharp words flew. Her voice sliced through the cabin as if privacy didn't exist. Passengers shrank into their seats, pretending not to listen, though every word echoed in their minds. "Do you know who I am?" she snapped, standing despite the seatbelt sign. People lose careers over less than this. The assistant's eyes filled with tears. A flight attendant approached carefully, voice calm, trained for de-escalation. "Ma'am, please take your seat." Evelyn turned on her like a predator sensing weakness. "Don't tell me what to do." That was when the boy spoke. "Please stop." It was barely louder than a whisper, but it cut through everything. Heads turned. The boy couldn't have been older than 8. He sat alone across the aisle, economy plus, wearing worn sneakers and a pink t-shirt that looked slightly too big. His hand shook as he stood, but his eyes were locked on Evelyn, not in fear, but in something far more dangerous. Truth. Evelyn laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Sit down, child. This doesn't concern you." But the boy didn't move. "You're hurting her," he said, pointing at the assistant. And everyone scared. A ripple of gasps moved through the cabin. No one spoke to Evelyn Cross like that. No one. Her smile vanished. She stepped closer, towering over him. "Do you have any idea what happens to people who embarrass me?" The boy swallowed. For a moment, fear flickered across his face. Then something else replaced it, resolve, born not of power, but of necessity. "My mom used to talk like you," he said quietly, "before she lost everything." That was when Evelyn froze. Her breath caught. Her eyes widened just slightly, just enough for the billionaire watching nearby to notice. He leaned forward, suddenly alert, his instincts screaming that something had gone terribly wrong. "What did you say?" she whispered. The boy took a step back, but he didn't lower his gaze. She thought she owned everyone. Until one day, she didn't. The cabin was silent now. Even the engine seemed distant. Evelyn's hands clenched. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was as if the boy had reached inside her chest and touched something buried deep, something she had locked away long ago. The billionaire stood up. "Evelyn," he said sharply. "That's enough." She didn't respond. All eyes shifted between the most powerful woman in the room and the smallest. The boy suddenly wobbled, the adrenaline catching up with him. A passenger reached out instinctively, steadying him. The flight attendant gently guided him back to his seat, whispering thanks through tears. Only then did Evelyn move. She turned slowly, her face unreadable, and walked back to her seat without another word. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She didn't even look at her husband. She just sat down. The plane exhaled. For the rest of the flight, no one spoke loudly. Conversations were hushed, glances frequent. Everyone sensed they had witnessed something rare, something fragile and dangerous. The billionaire remained standing for a long moment, staring at the boy. Questions burned in his mind. Who was he? How did he know? And why had his wife, the woman who feared nothing, looked afraid? As the plane began its descent, Evelyn finally spoke. Not to her husband. Not to the crew. To herself. Some ghosts, she murmured, never stay buried. And somewhere between the clouds and the runway, the billionaire realized this flight had changed everything. Asterisk, the landing gear touched the runway with a violent shudder, but inside the cabin, no one moved. Applause customary on flights like this never came. People remained frozen, still trapped in the moment when a small boy had done what no executive, no lawyer, no security detail had ever managed to do. He had silenced Evelyn Cross. As the plane slowed, the billionaire finally sat back down, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving his wife. Evelyn stared straight ahead, her reflection faintly visible in the dark window. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clasped them together, a detail only someone who knew her well would notice. And he knew her better than anyone. Or so he thought. When the seatbelt sign turned off, people stood cautiously, collecting bags, whispering to one another in hushed disbelief. Phones came out again, though no one dared point them directly. This was the kind of story people told later, not documented openly. Not yet. The boy remained seated. He looked exhausted now, smaller somehow, the weight of what he'd done settling onto his narrow shoulders. A woman across the aisle leaned toward him gently. "You okay, sweetheart?" He nodded, though his eyes were glossy. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't," she said softly. "You did the opposite." The billionaire watched the exchange. Something unfamiliar twisted in his chest: guilt, admiration, fear. He stood and walked down the aisle, ignoring the way conversations died the moment people realized who was approaching. He stopped in front of the boy. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. The boy looked up, eyes widening slightly. He knew who this man was. Everyone did. "Lucas," he said. "Are you traveling alone, Lucas?" Lucas shook his head. "My guardian is picking me up. She's late sometimes." The billionaire nodded. He hesitated, then lowered himself into the seat across the aisle. A billionaire sitting in Economy Plus was unthinkable, yet here he was. "What you did back there," he said quietly, "was very brave, but also very dangerous." Lucas swallowed. "I know. Then why did you do it?" Lucas looked down at his hands. "Because no one else would." The words hit harder than any accusation. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then the billionaire asked the question that had been burning since the boy's first words. "What did you mean? When you said your mom used to talk like her?" Lucas's shoulders stiffened. "She thought being rich meant being right," he said slowly. "She yelled at people, fired them, made them cry. She said it was how the world worked, and?" The billionaire pressed. "And then one day," Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper, "she got sick. Really sick. And all the people she hurt, they didn't come back." The billionaire's chest tightened. "She lost her money," Lucas continued. "Then she lost our house. Then she lost herself. He paused. Before she died, she told me something. The billionaire leaned closer. She said, if you ever meet someone powerful who scares everyone, remind them they can still lose everything. The boy finally looked up. So I did. The billionaire felt as if the air had been punched out of him. Behind them, Evelyn stood abruptly. Enough, she snapped, her voice sharp but strained. We're leaving. She grabbed her bag and stormed toward the exit, security scrambling to follow. The billionaire watched her go, then turned back to Lucas. I owe you an apology, he said. For what? Lucas asked. For not stopping her sooner. Lucas shrugged sadly. Most people don't. They disembarked soon after. Cameras flashed the moment Evelyn appeared, her mask firmly back in place, her stride confident, unshaken at least to the outside world. The billionaire followed a few steps behind, his mind racing. Lucas waited near the gate, clutching a worn backpack. A woman finally rushed toward him, breathless. Lucas! I'm so sorry, traffic was. It's okay, he said, hugging her. The billionaire watched from a distance as they walked away, disappearing into the crowd. He should have turned and followed his wife into the armored car waiting outside. Instead, he stood there. That night, the argument came like a storm. How dare you undermine me? Evelyn shouted, pacing their penthouse like a caged animal. In public? On a plane? You were humiliating an employee, he shot back. And a child had to stop you. A child humiliated me, she corrected, her eyes blazing. And you let him? Silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. Why did you freeze? He asked quietly. What did he say to you? Evelyn turned away. Nothing, that's a lie. She laughed bitterly. You always wanted to believe I was unbreakable. That I enjoyed being this way, didn't you? Her voice cracked. No, she sank onto the couch, suddenly smaller, older. I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid of ending up like my mother. Weak, forgotten. Power was the only thing that kept me safe. And now? He asked. Her hands shook again. Now I realize I became her anyway. The billionaire closed his eyes. That night, he didn't sleep. Neither did Evelyn. And somewhere across the city, Lucas lay awake too, staring at the ceiling, wondering if speaking the truth had changed anything at all, or if the world would snap back into place, like it always did. But it wouldn't, because the next morning, the billionaire made a decision that would send shockwaves through his empire, and bring that boy back into his life in a way none of them could have predicted. By sunrise, the city had already begun to buzz with rumors. A shaky phone video barely 30 seconds long had surfaced overnight. It didn't clearly show faces, but the audio was unmistakable. A woman shouting, passengers gasping, and finally a calm, steady child's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. The clip ended abruptly, but it was enough. Social media did the rest. Billionaire's wife silenced by kid on plane. Who is the boy who froze Evelyn Cross? Power meets truth at 30,000 feet. By 8 a.m., the billionaire's communications team was in full panic mode. Screens lit up with analytics, trending hashtags, media requests stacking faster than they could decline them. Sir, we need a statement, one advisor urged. Or we bury it, another countered. Threaten legal action. This goes away in 48 hours. The billionaire stared at the city skyline through the glass walls of his office, hands clasped behind his back. He hadn't slept. His reflection in the window looked older, heavier. No, he said finally. We don't bury this. The room went silent. We find the boy, he continued, and we listen. Across town, Lucas's life had already begun to tilt off its fragile balance. At school, whispers followed him down the hallway. A teacher pulled him aside, concern etched on her face. "Lucas, are you feeling okay? Do you need to talk to someone?" "I'm fine," he said automatically, though his stomach churned. At lunch, a classmate slid a phone across the table. "Is this you?" Lucas glanced at the screen and felt his throat tighten. The audio played softly. His voice, steady, almost unfamiliar, filled his ears. He pushed the phone back. "I didn't want anyone to hear that." "But everyone is," the kid said, half awed. "Dude, you talked back to her." Lucas didn't feel like a hero. He felt exposed. That afternoon, his guardian received the call. A calm, professional voice. An invitation. A request, not a demand. "The Cross Foundation would like to speak with Lucas," the voice said. "With your permission, of course." She nearly dropped the phone. By the time Lucas arrived at the towering glass building downtown, his hands were shaking. The lobby smelled like money-polished marble, fresh flowers, quiet power. Every step echoed too loudly. He was escorted upstairs, past people in suits who glanced at him with open curiosity. A boy in worn sneakers didn't belong here. Inside the conference room, the billionaire stood alone. No assistants. No lawyers. "Lucas," he said gently. "Thank you for coming." Lucas nodded, unsure what to say. "I won't keep you long," the man continued. "I just needed to understand." "Understand what?" Lucas asked. "How someone so young learned to be so brave." Lucas looked down. "I wasn't brave. I was tired." The billionaire gestured for him to sit. "Tired of what?" "Tired of watching people get smaller," Lucas said quietly. "My mom, other people. Everyone around someone like her." The billionaire absorbed that. "You know who my wife is?" "Yes." "And you still spoke?" "Yes." "Why?" Lucas met his eyes. "Because no one ever tells powerful people the truth. And then they forget it exists." The billionaire exhaled slowly, as if the words physically weighed on him. "You didn't just freeze her," he admitted. "You froze me too." Lucas frowned. "I didn't mean to." "I know," the billionaire interrupted. "But you did. And it forced me to see something I've avoided for years." He stood and walked to the window. "I built an empire believing control was protection. That strength meant never being questioned. Somewhere along the way, I let cruelty wear the mask of efficiency." He turned back. "My wife learned that from me." Lucas didn't know what to say to that. "I can't undo the damage," the billionaire continued. "But I can stop pretending it doesn't exist." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, programs, names. "I'm stepping back from daily operations," he said. "Effective immediately. An independent ethics board will oversee employee conduct, including mine." Lucas stared. "Because of me?" "Because of the truth," the billionaire corrected. "You just happened to speak it." Silence settled between them, heavy but not hostile. "There's something else," the billionaire said carefully. "The foundation. We want to offer you a scholarship. Full support. Education, mentorship." Lucas shook his head immediately. "I don't want to be a symbol." A sad smile crossed the billionaire's face. "That's exactly why you should accept." Lucas hesitated. "Only if it helps other kids too. Ones like my mom. Ones who don't get second chances." The billionaire nodded. "It will." Meanwhile, Evelyn Cross watched the news from their penthouse, her face pale. She saw the headlines shift. Not about her anger. About accountability. About change. And at the center of it all, a boy she could not forget. Her phone buzzed. A message from her husband. "We need to talk. Really talk." For the first time in years, she felt something other than rage or control. She felt fear. And something else. Regret. That evening, Lucas returned home, overwhelmed. His guardian hugged him tightly. "You did something big today," she whispered. "I didn't want it to be big," he replied. She smiled sadly. The truth usually is. As night fell, the billionaire sat alone in his study, replaying the boy's words again and again. Remind them they can still lose everything. He finally understood. And in understanding, he chose a path that would either redeem his legacy or destroy it completely. Because the hardest part was yet to come. Facing the woman he loved and asking her to change. The penthouse was silent in a way it had never been before. No clinking glasses. No sharp heels crossing marble floors. No raised voice slicing through the air like a weapon. Just the distant hum of the city far below, and the sound of a woman finally running out of places to hide. Evelyn Cross stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The reflection staring back at her barely looked human anymore. Her eyes were rimmed red, her posture rigid, as if she were bracing for impact that had already arrived. Behind her, the door opened. She didn't turn. "I saw the footage again," she said quietly. "Every angle. Every replay. They slow it down now, you know." Her husband stepped inside and closed the door behind him. For the first time in years, he didn't announce his presence. He didn't command the room. He simply stood there, watching the woman he had protected from consequences for far too long. "You froze," she continued, her voice brittle. "That boy looked at me like I was nothing. Like I had no power." "You didn't," he replied calmly. That made her turn. "What did you say?" "You didn't have power in that moment," he repeated. "Not over him. And not over me." The words hit harder than any headline. "You're choosing a child over your wife?" She snapped, old fury flaring instinctively. "I'm choosing the truth," he said. "And for once, I'm not running from it." She laughed a sharp, hollow sound. "You think this is about truth? This is humiliation. This is betrayal." "No," he said softly. "This is accountability." Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. "You built me this way," Evelyn whispered suddenly. "You rewarded it. Every time I crushed someone, you called it efficiency. Every time I dominated a room, you called it strength." He nodded. "And that's the part I have to live with." She stared at him, searching for the man who used to excuse everything. The man who used to look away. He was gone. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice unsteady. He took a breath. "Now you face consequences. Real ones." Her face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already have," he said. "The board will review your role in the foundation. Your access to staff. Your public appearances. Everything. You're destroying me." "No," he said firmly. "I'm stopping you from destroying others." For the first time, Evelyn Cross had nothing to say. Across the city, Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that woman's face, the shock, the rage. The moment she lost control, he hadn't meant to change anything. He'd only meant to stop it. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "This is Mr. Cross. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I just wanted you to know." She's stepping back. "And so am I. What you did mattered." Lucas read it twice. Then a third time. He typed slowly. "I didn't do it to hurt her. I just didn't want her to hurt anyone else." The reply came almost instantly. "Neither did I. I forgot that along the way. Thank you for reminding me." Lucas set the phone down, heart pounding. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar, relief. The fallout was immediate and massive. Employees across the Cross Empire were interviewed. Policies rewritten. Long silence complaints finally heard. Some executives resigned. Others were removed. Lawsuits followed. Settlements too. The media called it a reckoning. Insiders called it overdue. And at the center of every article, every analysis, every debate was the same question. Who was the boy? Lucas refused interviews. The foundation respected that. His scholarship was announced quietly, tied not to his name, but to a new initiative, the Ground Truth program designed to protect vulnerable voices from abuse of power. Evelyn Cross disappeared from public life. No statements. No appearances. No apologies. Until one day, there was one. A single, carefully worded letter released through the foundation. I spent years believing fear was respect. I was wrong. I harmed people. And no amount of wealth excuses that. I am stepping away to seek help and to learn what accountability truly means. It wasn't enough for some. Too late for others. But for one boy, it mattered. Lucas read the letter quietly, then folded it and placed it in a drawer. He didn't smile, but he didn't feel angry anymore either. Months later, the billionaire stood on a small stage inside a modest community center. No grand lighting. No cameras. Just a room full of employees, families, and kids. Lucas sat in the front row. I built a fortune, the man said, voice steady but humbled. But I forgot how easily power can blind you. It took a child, someone with nothing to lose, to remind me of something priceless. He looked directly at Lucas. Courage isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. Sometimes it's just a quiet voice saying enough. The room erupted in applause. Lucas felt heat rise to his face. After the event, the billionaire approached him. I never thanked you properly, he said. Lucas shrugged. I just said what I saw. The man smiled sadly. That's what scares people the most. He hesitated, then added, You know, the world will try to make you quiet. Promise me you won't let it. Lucas met his eyes. Only if you promise to keep listening. The billionaire nodded. Deal. That night, as the city lights flickered on, Lucas stood by his window at home, thinking about everything that had changed and everything that hadn't. Power still existed. Cruelty still lingered. But now, so did proof. Proof that even the most untouchable people could be stopped. Not by fists, not by money, but by truth. And somewhere, high above the city, a billionaire finally understood something he'd spent a lifetime missing. The strongest voice in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes, it's the one brave enough to speak when everyone else is silent.